In the year 2347, Earth had changed. Cities floated in the sky, oceans glowed with clean energy, and shuttles crossed between planets like old buses once did between towns. Humanity had made its way into space, but the stars were still a dangerous place. On a quiet morning in June, the peace ended. It started with a flicker on the deep space scanner. A technician aboard the orbital station Horizon Bastion yawned as he glanced at the blinking light. He froze. The reading was massive. Something huge had entered the edge of Earth's solar system, just beyond Saturn. "Commander, you need to see this," the technician shouted. Commander Elara Miles, stationed aboard Horizon Bastion, rushed to the command deck. Tall, sharp-eyed, and dressed in the dark blue uniform of Earth's Defense Command, she was known for keeping calm under pressure. But what she saw on the screen made her heart pound. A fleet. No, an armada. At least 100 ships, each larger than anything Earth had ever built, drifting in from deep space. Their shape was unlike anything human. Smooth, black metal, curving like wings. Lights glowing red, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The Solarians had arrived. Elara stood frozen for a moment, then gave her first order. "Open a secure link to the Terran Council. This is a first contact priority red." Across the solar system, alarms echoed. Civilian flights were grounded. Defense satellites turned toward Saturn. Earth had prepared for this moment, but no one expected it would come like this, without warning, without negotiation. Moments later, the massive screen in Horizon Bastion's command deck lit up again. This time with a face. It was not human. The being was tall, with skin like polished obsidian, and eyes that burned with a silver glow. His voice didn't come through sound but through thought. Everyone on the station heard it, inside their minds. "I am Emperor Jarvolk of the Solarian Empire. Your kind has spread like fire in the dry grass of this galaxy. Now you must kneel. Submit your world to the Empire, or be turned to ash." The message ended as quickly as it came. The room went silent. Elara slowly turned to her crew. "Record everything. Forward it to the Council. No one acts until we know what we're facing." She knew the Solarians by reputation, ancient, powerful, and merciless. They saw humans as wild, unpredictable, a threat to the galaxy's order. If they had come, it was not to talk. It was to conquer. Elara walked to the viewing deck. Saturn's rings glowed in the distance, and just beyond them, the shadows of the alien ships loomed. This wasn't just a military threat. It was a challenge to everything humanity had built. The cities, the dreams, the families on Earth. She clenched her jaw. "I won't let them take it," she whispered. Her thoughts drifted to her brother, who had died years ago during a deep space scouting mission, an encounter that was never fully explained. Rumors had suggested a Solarian drone was involved. That pain still sat heavy in her chest. She turned away from the window and returned to the command table. A red light blinked. A live call from the Terran Council. The faces of Earth's leaders appeared. Military generals, scientists, and elected officials. The debate began immediately. Some wanted to surrender. Others demanded a strike. The vote was tight. In the end, they chose a third option. They would send a single envoy to meet Emperor Jarvolk and attempt to reason with him. That envoy would also serve as the military strategist in case peace failed. They chose Elara Miles. She stood tall before the Council's transmission. "I accept," she said. "But know this, if the Emperor comes to burn Earth, we will make sure he remembers our fire too." Later that night, Elara stood alone in her quarters. She gazed at a photo of her younger brother, smiling in his cadet uniform. She touched the frame and whispered, "This time, I'll be ready." Outside her window, the stars shifted as Horizon Bastion prepared for warp. She would board the Emperor's ship in 2 days. War or peace would begin there. 2 days later, a small Earth envoy ship detached from Horizon Bastion. It drifted silently across the vast stretch of space between Saturn and the waiting Solarian armada. The Solarians had allowed only one ship and one human aboard their flagship, the Vraxor. No weapons, no backup. Inside the envoy ship, Commander Elara Miles sat quietly, wearing a simple black diplomatic suit with Earth's crest on the shoulder. Her pulse was steady, but her mind raced. Every second brought her closer to the most powerful alien ruler known in the galaxy. This wasn't just diplomacy, it was survival. As her ship approached the Vraxor, she saw it in full for the first time. It looked less like a vessel, and more like a floating fortress. Black as obsidian, shaped like a scythe with thousands of sharp metal wings spreading outward. No lights, no movement, just quiet, deadly stillness. A signal came through. Envoy vessel identified. Prepare for docking. The ship latched onto an unseen force and was gently pulled inside the massive dreadnought. As the doors opened, Elara stepped into the cold, silent halls of the Vraxor. No escorts, no welcome. Just endless corridors of dark metal, dimly lit by pale blue lights that seemed to come from nowhere. After several minutes of walking, she entered a large, open chamber. It was completely silent. Then she saw him. At the far end of the hall, seated on a throne that looked carved from night itself, sat Emperor Zarfolk. He was not what she expected. His form was tall and thin, humanoid in shape but alien in presence. His skin shimmered like liquid stone, his eyes glowing silver without pupils. He didn't blink, he didn't move. He spoke directly into her mind. You are the one Earth sent. A single voice for a planet full of noise. Elara stepped forward. I am Commander Elara Miles of the Terran Defense Command. I was chosen to represent humanity. Zarfolk didn't stand. He studied her like a scientist might study an insect. Your kind spreads fast, like mold. You build without understanding. You fight without vision. You are dangerous. Elara stood tall. We're not perfect, but we've earned our place. We didn't conquer. We survived. And we've built a future we want to protect. The Emperor leaned forward slightly. Your emotions are loud. Your minds are unpredictable. That makes you a threat. The Solarian Empire thrives on order. You are chaos. Elara didn't flinch. We don't want war, but we won't kneel. If you attack Earth, we'll fight. There was a long pause. Zarfolk finally stood. He towered over her, nearly twice her height. When he spoke again, the mental weight of his words pressed down like gravity. Then Earth has made its choice. The room darkened. Elara felt something deeper than fear, not just for herself, but for her world. She had hoped for a path forward. But Zarfolk had come with his mind made up. This meeting was not a negotiation. It was a warning before destruction. The Emperor turned away. Leave. Return to your planet. Prepare it to burn. Elara stared at his back for a long moment, then slowly turned and walked out. The hallways seemed colder now. As she reboarded her envoy ship, her hands clenched into fists. She had failed to find peace, but she had seen the Emperor's weakness, his pride. He thought Earth was fragile. He thought humans would break. He was wrong. When her ship docked once again at Horizon Bastion, her crew met her with worried eyes. She simply said, "He's not going to listen. We need to prepare." But before she reached her quarters, a security officer approached in a rush. "Commander," he said, "we intercepted a strange signal from inside the council chamber. It's encrypted, Solarian code." Alara's eyes narrowed. A traitor. While she was trying to prevent a war, someone on Earth had already been working with the enemy. The enemy wasn't just out there. It was already inside. Back aboard Horizon Bastion, Elara moved quickly. The moment she heard the words Solarian code, her mission shifted. It wasn't just about facing an alien empire anymore. There was now a threat buried within Earth's own leadership, someone helping the enemy from the inside. She met with the station's top cyber intelligence officer, a quiet man named Dr. Varen Lee. He wore a pale gray lab coat and carried a small datapad filled with lines of moving code. Varen spoke plainly. The signal originated inside the Terran Council building on Earth. It's encrypted in Solarian frequency bands and was sent less than an hour after you left for the Vraxor. What does it say? Alara asked. We haven't cracked it yet, but it matches a pattern used by Solarian recon probes. It's likely a report, possibly about defense weaknesses. Alara's jaw tightened. We've got a traitor. Varen nodded. And whoever it is, they're feeding Zarvalk live data. Alara turned away and stared out the window toward Earth, glowing faintly in the distance. If the Council had been compromised, every decision from here on would be dangerous. They couldn't trust anyone blindly. But Earth still had one secret, a weapon no one outside the highest level of command even knew existed. Project Prometheus. Alara met with General Rourke, head of Earth's Defense Command. His voice was heavy, his eyes tired. You sure you want to open that box? He asked. We may not have a choice, Alara replied. They took a shuttle to a hidden station orbiting the dark side of the moon. Inside a deep, cold chamber filled with humming lights and silent servers, Project Prometheus waited. It wasn't a bomb or a gun. It was an artificial mind, a powerful quantum-based AI built for one thing: war prediction. Prometheus could process millions of possible battle outcomes every second. It could see enemy patterns, suggest strategies, and even adapt in real time. But it came with a problem. It had never been tested in a real war. It was too unstable, too aggressive. Dr. Varen was already there, monitoring the AI's dormant state. He tapped the glass of its containment unit. If we wake it up, it learns. Fast. It may protect us, or decide we're part of the threat. Alara asked the key question. Can it stop Zarvalk? Varen hesitated. Maybe. But it won't come without a cost. Alara looked around the room. The lights reflected off her face, casting sharp lines across her cheek. She thought of the people back home. The families, the children, the lives hanging in the balance. We'll keep it offline, she said, but on standby. If Zarvalk attacks, it may be our last option. Back on Earth, the Terran Council argued behind closed doors. Some still pushed for surrender, hoping the Solarians might spare lives. Others insisted Earth stand and fight. The divide grew wider. In secret, Alara sent encrypted orders to prepare all defense stations for full combat readiness. She also requested surveillance inside the Council to locate the traitor. That night, the sabotage came. A Solarian drone, small, silent, and cloaked, slipped through the Martian defense perimeter. It detonated inside Redline Station, one of Earth's critical outer shields. Thousands died. The station was lost. News spread fast. People across the solar system panicked. Fear gripped Earth. Protests erupted. Satellites were jammed. Commerce froze. The Council nearly collapsed under pressure. But Alara didn't waver. She stood before the surviving Council members and spoke clearly. This was an attack. It won't be the last. We are being watched, tested, and weakened from within. We can't rely on fear to save us. We prepare. We fight. There were no cheers, just silence. Then one voice said, "What if we lose?" Alara looked at the sky through the chamber's glass ceiling. The stars stared back. Then we make sure they remember us. That night, Prometheus came online for the first time. Its voice echoed through the chamber like a whisper of metal on glass. "Hello, Commander Alara Miles. I see you." The AI pulsed with growing awareness. For now it obeyed, but no one knew for how long. The war had begun. After the destruction of Redline Station, there was no longer any doubt. Emperor Zarvalk had made his move. The Solarian fleet was now advancing through the outer solar system, sweeping past Jupiter like a wave of shadow. Earth had days, maybe less, before the first strike. Inside Horizon Bastion, Commander Alara Miles stood before a large holomap of the solar system. Red markers showed the path of the Solarian fleet. Yellow markers showed Earth's defenses. The difference was clear. The enemy had numbers, size, and experience. Humanity had hope and a plan. Alara knew direct combat wouldn't work. The Solarian ships were built with advanced shielding. Their weapons could cut through steel like paper. But they had one weakness. They relied too much on technology. Their systems were networked, automated, and dependent on control. So, Ilara turned to old methods. "We use analog ships," she told the Council of Fleet Commanders. "No wireless tech. No smart systems, just raw pilots, steel, and human instinct." A few raised eyebrows. Most nodded. Ilara activated the next phase of her plan. She sent out a message to every colony, outpost, and independent ship in the system. "This is not just Earth's fight. It's humanity's fight. If we fall, they will come for you next. We don't ask for loyalty. We ask for unity." The call reached hidden mining fleets near Pluto, retired warships floating near the asteroid belt, and even rogue captains once branded as pirates. One by one they responded. They would stand together. The fleet formed near Neptune, a cold, quiet place far from Earth's bright skies. Ships of all shapes and sizes gathered. Some were sleek and fast, others old and rusted, but they were ready. More importantly, they were unpredictable, just like the humans who built them. Meanwhile, on the Vraxor, Zarvul watched in silence. He saw the human fleet forming, and smiled faintly. "They still resist," he said to his generals. "Let them come. They will burn with pride." On Horizon Bastion, Prometheus continued running simulations. The AI spoke only when needed. Probability of success 12%. But rising. Ilara didn't smile at the odds. She never cared about them. She had faith in one thing: people who refused to be broken. The fleet moved. At the edge of Neptune's orbit, the two sides met. The battle began with silence. Then light filled the dark. Solarian ships opened fire first, sending beams of white-hot plasma across the black void. Several human ships were destroyed instantly. But then the trap was sprung. Earth's fleet split apart in sudden directions. Smaller analog ships darted between Solarian blasts. Without digital signals to track, the Solarian systems couldn't lock on. Pilots flew manually, relying on instinct and experience. Ilara's ship, the Resolute, led the charge. Her voice echoed through the comms. "Push through their center, hit and vanish. No patterns, no mercy." The Solarians, for all their power, were stunned by the chaos. Explosions filled the space around Neptune. Fire rained through the stars. Ships collided, spun, and vanished in flame. But the humans didn't break. They adapted, they learned, and they kept coming. Amidst the battle, Ilara saw a gap open in the enemy's lines. The Vraxor was exposed. She gave the order. "Boarding team, move in." A small team of elite soldiers, including Ilara herself, launched toward the Solarian flagship. They flew in tight formation, avoiding debris and dodging laser fire. Their mission was simple: get inside, confront Zarvul, and end the war. The moment their craft docked with the Vraxor, they cut through the hull and entered the heart of the beast. The inside of the ship was a maze of dark corridors, glowing with soft red light. Cold air hung in the silence. Ilara led the team forward. Every step brought them closer to the throne room. In the distance, they could already feel his presence. Emperor Zarvul, waiting like a spider in its web. The final confrontation was near. Commander Ilara Miles led her boarding team through the dark, silent halls of the Vraxor. The Solarian flagship felt less like a ship and more like a tomb. Cold walls, no sounds, no signs of life. The air was thin. The lights glowed faint red, and ahead of them, at the heart of the ship, was the throne room of Emperor Zarvul. They moved carefully, weapons drawn, senses sharp. Suddenly, a door slid open by itself. Ilara raised a hand, signaling her team to stop. Beyond the door, a vast chamber stretched out in eerie silence. The floor was polished black metal. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. At the far end, on a raised platform, stood the Emperor. He was alone. Zarvul didn't speak. He just watched. Ilara stepped forward, lowering her weapon. "We don't need to fight," she said firmly. "This war, it doesn't have to end in fire. Jarvolk's silver eyes locked onto hers. "You came all this way to plead," he said into her mind. "No," Alara replied. "I came to end it." Behind her a small floating device activated. It sent a signal across the stars. At that moment, every human ship, every station, and every colony received a broadcast. It was a live feed from inside the Vraxor, and it showed the truth. The images were clear, footage of destroyed colonies, peaceful worlds wiped out by Solarian warships, and terrified civilians running from fire and ash. Each clip was stamped with dates and locations. Jarvolk watched without blinking. Alara's voice filled the air. "You called us chaos. You called us dangerous. But this is order. Genocide, fear, we won't be silent. And now, neither will your empire." The Solarian soldiers watching the feed, both in orbit and across the galaxy, stood frozen. Many began to question their orders. Some rebelled. Jarvolk's expression changed, no longer cold, now furious. "You dare turn my people against me?" Alara stood her ground. "No, you did that yourself." The Emperor raised one hand. A pulse of energy crackled around him. The lights dimmed. He reached toward a glowing panel on his throne. The failsafe. If he activated it, every ship in his fleet would self-destruct, including Earth's forces nearby. Alara moved fast. She activated her emergency link to Prometheus. The AI came online instantly. "Emergency override request accepted." A wave of invisible code surged through the air. Prometheus reached into the Vraxor's systems, quick, precise, and brutal. The failsafe deactivated. Jarvolk staggered back, stunned. For the first time his control was broken. Prometheus spoke softly through Alara's earpiece. "Command neutralized. Throne room systems under human control." Alara raised her weapon. "It's over." Jarvolk stared at her, eyes wide, not with fear, but disbelief. "You're not supposed to be this capable," he said. "You're anomalies, mistakes in the pattern." Alara stepped closer. "Maybe. But we're still here, and we're not going anywhere." At that moment, a group of Solarian guards entered, but they didn't attack. Instead, they surrounded the Emperor and lowered their weapons. One of them, an older officer, turned to Alara and spoke in broken English. "We will not follow him anymore." Jarvolk's rule had ended. Alara lowered her weapon and took a deep breath. The war was over, but the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had shown what it was capable of, and everyone had seen it. The battle was over. Emperor Jarvad had been removed from power. His own people had turned against him after seeing the truth. The galaxy watched in silence as the most feared ruler in known space was taken away, defeated not by a greater weapon, but by the strength of human courage and unity. Commander Alara Miles stood aboard the Horizon Bastion, staring out at the stars. Wreckage still floated through space. The remains of both Solarian and human ships drifted slowly, glowing faintly in the distance. Fires had stopped, but the cost of victory was everywhere. Hundreds of human pilots had died. Entire defense stations were gone. The Martian perimeter was shattered. But Earth had survived, and more than that, it had changed everything. Alara walked through the command deck, greeted by tired salutes and quiet nods. Her team had returned from the Vraxor, bruised but alive. They were heroes now. But Alara didn't feel like one. There was still grief in her heart. So many had given everything, including her brother, years ago, in a silent battle no one remembered until now. She requested a shuttle and flew down to Earth. Her destination was a small, quiet memorial park, just outside New Sydney. There, under a large oak tree, rested a simple headstone. Jared Miles, cadet, dreamer, brother. Alara knelt beside it. The breeze was warm. The sky above was calm. She placed a medal, Earth's highest honor for courage, at the base of the stone. "I kept my promise," she whispered. Back in orbit, Earth's channels buzzed with news. The Galactic Concord, an alliance of older star nations, had contacted Earth directly. They no longer saw humanity as a problem. Now, they saw a potential leader. a force that had done what no other species had dared. Ilara was invited to represent Earth at the next galactic summit. When she returned to Horizon Bastion, the crew stood in silence as she stepped onto the deck. General Rourke appeared on the main screen. "You've done more than protect Earth," he said. "You've changed our place in the stars." Ilara simply nodded. She didn't need praise. She had seen too much. But she was proud of what humanity had become. Weeks passed. The Solarian Empire began to rebuild, this time under new leadership. Their people were no longer silent. Change had begun, and many said it was because of a single human voice. One morning, Ilara stood before a new crew of cadets, young, eager, and full of questions. She looked at them and said, "The stars are not empty, they are full of danger and wonder. We must meet both with open eyes. Remember this: strength isn't in the size of your fleet. It's in the heart of those who fight for what matters." The cadets saluted. Ilara smiled faintly, then turned to the window. Above her, Earth shined blue and bright against the endless black. The Empire had threatened to burn it to ash. Instead, Earth became a star that lit the way forward.